Hi, Robin. We would like to welcome our guest today, Jonas Rosen. Welcome.
Thank
We
you.
we are so excited to have him on. I know I have some questions for you because I'm really fascinated with the whole psychedelic thing. Not that I've personally had an experience with it, but I'm very curious. So why don't you just get us started by telling us like a little bit about your early life and were you always into spirituality or when did this start for you?
Yeah, it's interesting. It really emerged out of nowhere for me. Just to set the stage, over the last 5 years, I've been working full time as a psychedelic therapist. I've been based in Jamaica, of all places, as one of the few countries internationally where psychedelic plant medicines, these ancient substances that come straight from the earth, psilocybin mushrooms, ayahuasca, mescaline, peyote, these are legal in Jamaica. And over the past 5 years, I've been working at a legal therapeutic retreat center there in Jamaica and helping people address, depression, anxiety, trauma, really like going deep into what we could call the shadow side of the psyche and engaging that consciously as almost an initiatory process by which we're confronting our suffering as a means to transmute it and to heal. And this work is so much deeper than just mental health. It really taps into the spiritual domains of life and um, so many different aspects of the human experience. And that was really where spirituality entered into the equation for me personally. A little over, well, let me just say, growing up, I grew up really in a kind of non-religious, non-spiritual household. I never went to church, never went to synagogue or temple, anything like that. And honestly, the word spirituality meant very, very little to me for a really long time. I It all kind of began with my first psychedelic experience, which was back in 2011. I was a freshman at college at the time, and I had really been raised to kind of fear all these substances. I was taught from a young age, drugs are bad. Do not do them. And I that was, deeply kind of conditioned into me. I had a friend approach me in college and just said, "Hey, we've got some mushrooms. A couple of us are gonna go try them. Do you want to join?" And there was a lot of fear and kind of apprehension that came with that, but also a deep curiosity. I mean, from a really young age, I've always been so curious and fascinated. What are the big questions? What are the biggest questions that I can ask about this mystery of life, this incredibly strange, beautiful, bizarre, miraculous experience of being a human? Somehow, here I am, here we are. It's almost like life has just, spit us out and trying to make sense of that. So it was really curiosity was won over fear that day for me. And without really any intention of having a spiritual experience or having a kind of transformative experience, I was just curious. Um, with a couple of friends, we went to this little park in Nashville where I was going to school at the time. It's called Love Hill and it's overlooking the city of Nashville. Ate a couple grams of mushrooms, and I knew that the effects were kicking in. Something was happening because I was laying there in the grass and I was looking up in the sky and I saw a bird fly overhead. It was almost like behind the bird there was like a wake, like these ripples behind that this like kind of tracer tail in the sky and these ripples. And I was like, whoa, that is not normal. And at the time, I'll say as well, I was dealing with a lot of what I would call kind of existential anxiety, a sense of feeling kind of lost, directionless, almost like I was adrift at sea. Do I go that way, that way, that way, or that way? Apparently, at the end of this 4 years of college, I'm supposed to know what I want to do with the rest of my life, career, occupation, life meaning, life purpose. I had no idea. I felt clueless. I felt lost. And that was just like a constant weight in the back of my mind. And I noticed in that experience as I was looking up in the sky, all of a sudden it was like that just dissipated. That was gone. That kind of constant background din of anxiety was just gone, and it was steadily being replaced with this overwhelming sense of awe, like wonder. I was looking around and all the seemingly mundane details of life, the trees swaying in the wind, the clouds floating by, the grass. I remember staring at a single blade of grass and just being transfixed. Looking more and more and more closely, all of a sudden I realized, oh my God, this one little blade of grass is an unbelievably elegant, miraculous thing in and of itself that this exists at all. And I just became overwhelmed by this sense of awe. I would almost describe this experience as like awe therapy. And it was almost like that childlike sense of wonder and that feeling that you get when you're standing at the edge of the Grand Canyon or somewhere sacred. And I was seeing that in everything. And I would almost describe that as my first ever real profound spiritual experience, the first experience that from myself that I would describe as a spiritual experience.
Mhm.
And um, that kind of culminated in this really powerful moment. I mean, this was 15 years ago or so, but I still remember it like it was yesterday. It still feels very real and like juicy and alive for me.
Mhm.
I felt my heart beating in my chest, and it was like it was beating extra loud with extra power, force, volume. And I was just feeling that really intensely, like, whoa. And it was kind of this almost eureka moment of realization where all of a sudden I realized there's absolutely no effort or exertion behind my heart beating. I'm not making that happen. Nor do I have even the vaguest idea as to how that is happening. I started thinking about the unbelievable, trillions of little cells coming together and working together just to make this experience possible.
Mhm.
And it was almost like my mind started zooming back through my life, through the history of the universe, all the way through, whatever millions, billions of years that of universal evolution that it's taken just for me to be having this experience. And somehow there was this sense of life emergence. It felt like this direct encounter with what I would call the infinite divine intelligence of all of reality. That somehow in this mystery, it's like every little atom, every little iota is in exactly its right place, has come together in exactly such a way for this all to be happening, for this unbelievably complex process of just my heart beating. I mean, complex, but maybe the most simple thing. Here I am, breathing, existing, aware. And it was this encounter with uh, all of a sudden I realized that I'm a mystery to myself. I became fascinated by the fact that I am a mystery to myself and that everything is mysterious and miraculous. And also infused with this kind of infinite intelligence that somehow this knows how to just happen. Life knows how to life somehow, for lack of a better word. To me, that felt incredibly magical. And since then, I've kind of come to understand this experience for myself as sort of like a re-enchantment of life. It was a very intellectually humbling thing. I thought that I knew things. I thought I understood things.
Mhm.
I had a very scientific worldview that, eventually the progression of science will explain all of this.
Mhm.
And all of a sudden it was like, oh no, 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 no. You don't know anything. You don't know the first thing. You don't even know who you are. And I never saw life the same way since that day. For one, it really shifted my relationship with anxiety. It had in a very pragmatic, practical way. This was a huge boost to my overall mental health, my wellness. It kind of jolted me out of that default mode of I've got to figure this out and what am I doing? Where am I going to just this more kind of like open, relaxed, receptive um, curiosity and fascination and that encounter of awe and wonder and the miraculous so deeply fascinated me that a few grams of a dried fungus, of all things, could elicit such a visceral, profound, powerful, for me, sacred
Mhm.
response from my psyche just
Yeah.
absolutely fascinated me. And from that point, I went all in. I started really deeply trying to investigate, learn more about this. This was a time that a lot of research was coming out of, prestigious research institutions, Johns Hopkins, Imperial College of London, various psychedelic research institutions around the planet, and learning more about all the psychedelic research really validated my experience and opened doors of further exploration that really catalyzed this profound shift in my life. The last thing
Mhm.
I'll say about that, just to kind of set the stage for the rest of this conversation, is that in the first mushroom experience, I really went from being kind of an atheist to agnostic, like really deeply acknowledging, I don't know. I don't know if is there more to the mystery of life beyond this physical universe that we can perceive with our physical senses? Is there more to what I am than this physical body and mind and identity? Hi, my name is Jonas. Is that the deepest truth of who and what I am? As that exploration continued, I encountered other psychedelics. There's one called NN-DMT, dimethyltryptamine, which is the psychedelic compound in ayahuasca, and which is another plant medicine that's been in continuous use for thousands of years. And that experience for me, what really elicited what I would describe as a fully out of body experience beyond this lifetime, beyond space and time altogether. Subjectively, it was like I was launched out of my body and had a direct encounter with what I would describe as some sort of alternate realm, dimension of existence, some sort of like invisible reality beyond this universe that felt so real in a way that's hard to put into words, felt even more real than this lifetime. As foreign and bizarre as it was, it felt like a homecoming. I know this place. I've been to this place before. It felt like a glimpse of the spirit realm, of spiritual realms of existence, inhabited by other beings, sentient forms of life, who I was engaging with and learning from, and as well facilitated this sense of profound oneness, this unbelievable, expansive experience of whatever this is somehow seamlessly interwoven into the very fabric of all of this, that we're all kind of like waves on the surface of the ocean here, that there's a wave here and a wave there and a wave there, but there's only one ocean and we're all part of it. And so that experience shifted me from agnostic to whatever the opposite of an atheist is. Not only is divinity real, it is everything. So to me, that experience really catapulted my kind of spiritual exploration into, yes, there are other non-physical realms of existence beyond this universe, spiritual realities, spiritual beings, life after death, reincarnation, divinity, all these things took on a quality of reality to me. This
Mhm.
is real, and that changed my life forever.
Yeah. So was it during this process? At what point in the journey did the Kundalini awaken happen for you? Was it early on or after several experiences with plant medicine?
Yeah, for me, that was definitely an aspect of the first ever psilocybin experience that
Mhm.
I was describing. What I didn't mention is there were very visceral, somatic in my body
Mhm.
feelings of powerful surges and waves and movements of
Mhm.
energy, of subtle energy that is not so subtle if we really pay attention to it. But yeah, I mean, there are these flows of, and it was Kundalini-esque. I didn't use that language at the time. I didn't really have that language at the time, but definitely this feeling of energy rising up through the spine. And then to me, that kind of continued. It was more of a slow burn there than like this um, kind of thunderbolt lightning Kundalini awakening. It was a little bit more of a slow burn for me there,
Mhm.
which I think was actually really good for just my course of evolution and growth because it was a little bit more gentle,
Was
and
that precipitated? Did you have that before you used the plant medicine, or was that something that happened as a byproduct or during that experience?
it's really interesting because it stirred some deep sense of knowing or memory within me in a way that's hard to describe, even as that experience was happening. Again, it had this quality of kind of like foreign and new, but also familiar.
Mhm.
But to my conscious recollection, there was no other experience in my life of
Well,
Kundalini
you
awakening
know,
before then.
it's my understanding that we raise our Kundalini one time as a soul. And so many people have had activity in a prior lifetime and they don't have any remembrance of it. And in fact, what actually calls you to the plant medicine is the Kundalini energy. It's something that knows that it needs a little assistance or believability or something to help you actually access that in this lifetime. And so once in a while, I get clients like that who they have these surges of energy or they have this activity, but they haven't had the marked incident. So they're always wondering whether or not their Kundalini is activated. And in most cases, it has happened to them in a prior lifetime. And people that get the very strong spiritual desire, and most people will recognize this right away when it's brought to their attention. And Heidi, you probably remember too, when you first got on this bandwagon, there becomes this insatiable desire to read more, to know more, to listen to more spiritual material and to talk to everyone that you can about it. And that is the Kundalini energy that's calling you. I
Yeah.
used to think I was looking for it. And then I realized quite a long time afterwards that it was calling me. That's actually what happened. And I believe that's probably, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, of course, but I believe that's probably what brought you in this direction. One of the first things that came to my mind as you were talking, because I know some people that use mushrooms, maybe they're different. I don't know. I don't know a lot about mushrooms, but they don't get the spiritual result that you do. They didn't get the blade of grass, the trail behind the birds, the ability to see frequency, or what you were really doing is residing at another level of consciousness of which your problems are not a part of, because there are no emotions that support the way that you feel in that reality. So you no longer have that. And so what I'm trying to say, I'm really trying to solidify a little bit that this is a journey that you've been on in a prior lifetime.
Mm,
And one of the reasons you're getting the results that you have, and probably the people that are coming to you are the same, or they need this next step or this help getting to the next step, and it's why they're brought to that avenue or that way. If that makes any sense to you at all, because I do know a lot of people, especially being from the state of Washington, where there are mushrooms readily available there that a lot of people use, but they're not on a spiritual path, and they're using them recreationally. I'm not knocking it. They get a good feeling out of it, or they're enjoying it for whatever reason, but they're not having the experience that you're having. So I just wanted to give that to you, that the one of the reasons that you had that experience is you had that energy already active within you.
mm, mm. That rings true. That rings true. And I will say, I mean, exactly as you described, I have never experienced such an intense magnetic pull in
Mhm.
every cell of my body, in every fiber of my being. I must explore this. I was drawn to it so
Yeah,
viscerally
like a
and
drug.
Yeah,
voraciously.
yeah,
I mean, it consumed my life
yeah,
in a really good and beautiful way, in a way that brought challenges as well, but
yeah.
in an amazing way. And I will say as well, I at this point, I really see all experiences of life as a spiritual experience.
Mhm.
That being said, I certainly, you know, the mushroom experience, the psychedelic experience, is by no means always experienced as a spiritual phenomenon, right? I kind of conceptualize these plant medicines as almost like a tool. And like any tool, there are many different ways of applying the tool. I mean, if you think about a hammer, a hammer can be used to build things and it can be used to destroy things, right?
Right.
A
Right.
car is incredibly useful for getting us from point A to point B, but if we don't know how to drive a car, then we're not it's not going to be effective at getting us from point A to point B, and it could also be dangerous, you know. So I'm also not a person who believes that everyone should experience this. I don't think that everyone should experience this. I don't think that we should put it in the water supply or anything like that, right? This isn't right for everyone, and it's a tool, it's a vehicle, it's a path. There are many different paths, and different paths are right for different people, you know. And the psychedelic experience is so strange and mysterious. It almost has a quality of the more I know, the less I know, where it can tap into virtually every single domain of the human experience and sometimes beyond. Sometimes this does really feel like a profound transpersonal mystical type experience of encountering other realities. Sometimes it feels quite the opposite, where it's a deeply personal thing where I'm just going back and addressing, aspects of healing, of depression, of trauma, of aspects in my life where, there's stuckness or kind of like psychic knots, right? And earlier, I mentioned this idea of the infinite divine intelligence of all of life. Somehow I feel that there's something in us that knows exactly what we need. And that's what comes up in the psychedelic experience. There's this idea of that's very analogous to the divine intelligence of life. We could call it inner healing intelligence. And um, in a very pragmatic sense, I mean, we can think about this in a physical sense. If I get sick, if I get an illness, then I have an immune system that very naturally mobilizes to restore wellness in my
Mhm.
life. If I break a bone, if I break my arm, I go to the doctor puts a cast on my arm, but somehow, by some incredible, miraculous process, the healing is rendered from within like the cellular knowledge of our body, right? And the idea is that the exact same thing holds true for the psyche, for our mental health issues. And when someone is engaging the psychedelic experience, it's almost like, okay, is there mental health first aid that's required here? Like, what is most urgent? If someone is in a place of desperation, of deep darkness, where it feels like I'm without hope right now, despair. Like I can't see a light of hope at the end of this tunnel, then there's going to be other, aspects of the psyche or of my human experience that more urgently need tending to than having a direct encounter with God or divinity, right? And it's incredible to witness time and time again. I mean, over the past 5 years, working at this retreat center, I've worked with well over 1,000 people, thousands, I've facilitated thousands of psychedelic doses. And to see again and again and again the way that this operates almost with surgical precision to take us directly to exactly the issue that is kind of like at the very crux of all my symptoms of depression or anxiety or addiction or whatever the case may be, all the time I hear people say, like, wow, I didn't even remember that experience happening 30 years ago. It wasn't even on my radar. Like I'd completely forgotten about
Wow.
this episode or this experience that happened. And yet in the experience, it's like whoosh, I go straight there
Yeah.
and now I'm dealing with this and processing all the emotions, all the energy, all the kind of stuckness associated with that, kind of metabolizing that, processing that, and working through that. And on the other side, it's like, wow, my I you know, my depression is almost gone.
Yeah,
And
what you're describing is uncanny to me because it's very similar when I have sessions with people. And I think what happens is even when you use the method or the means that you're using, and they're all good methods, I think, you're asking for something. There's a reason that people are there. They have an intent or a desire or a struggle, if you will, in their life, and they're using this as a means or an opportunity to solve that. And the universe is a problem solver. That's what it is.
mm,
A lot of people think that there's the human and then there is a divinity aspect and that somehow they're separated. But you're radiating out how you feel, and then the universe is receiving you in that feeling, and then it's radiating back the higher level experience feeling that you would like to have. It radiates that back through your field, and then your response is what comes to you in negativity. But a lot of humans want to get rid of that. They don't like the way that feels, and they think that they're negative, it's a bad thing. But that is the correspondence between the divinity part of you and the human. As it receives you, it lifts that energy or transmutes it, as you said, to a higher octave or level. And then the experience now that it's coming with, that it wants to flow to you, lights you up in what you are preventing the flow. What is it in you? The jealousy, the rage, the anger, the not enoughness, the unworthiness. And
Yes.
so if people would really understand that there's this dance that's going on, this connection, they always say, well, how can I get more connected? You couldn't be more connected, because every time you call out for something, the universe makes a solution to it, and it's attached to you and immediately tries to flow it, and then butts up against the energy that you're holding that won't allow the flow to reach you. So it's similar to what you're saying, but people become non-resistive or lifted to a level of consciousness during that time when they are using that tool. That's what it is. So they use me as a tool. I'm a tool too, but it
Right.
lifts their consciousness to a level where they can permit the solution its entrance. When you are in density and you are suffering and you are unconsciously aware of how you're creating, you can't receive the solution. You need a tool. So you have a good tool, and I know a lot of people that have used that and had great success with it. We just watched the Aaron Rodgers.
Oh, yeah.
I think you did too. But I'm a tool too. As you said, there's a lot of different ways that people do this, but to understand that's you as a human signaling to the divine part of yourself, I got a problem here. Something's not working or quite right in my life. And then the universal part of you says, well, I've made everything right. Let me send it to you. And then all of a sudden you feel all of the things that are in you that are not letting you have that desired feeling life that you want. And unfortunately, people look at negativity as a bad thing when really it's a communicative thing. That's what I'm trying to say.
Right. That's beautifully said. Yeah, and it invokes in me this idea of faith and trust, you know, that
Mhm.
um we can open and allow for
Mhm.
solutions to come to us, you know. And
Right.
that's one of the really empowering ideas of this quality of the infinite divine intelligence of life. If a seed knows how to in and of itself turn into a tree, there's already that knowledge contained there. We don't have to peel open the seed and figure out, how do I pull the flower out of the seed, right? That's a counterproductive thing to do.
Right.
But to just provide the water, the sunlight, the nutrients to nourish change, to create, to make the ground fertile for change, and then trust that that's unfolding.
Mhm.
Oh man, I mean, I can't tell you like how deeply nourishing and how much of just that has continued to kind of elevate my vibe, like in the face of the darkness in this world, in a world full of conflict,
Yeah.
and people suffering. And me as like a relatively younger person with my life ahead of me looking out, that can feel just like a tsunami wave,
Mhm.
that can feel really, really weighty and like an anchor. And what to me, like, just keeps my vibe high is that sense of like, of it's all happening. It's all in its right place. And trusting in that creates this incredibly expansive state whereby we're much more empowered to navigate life. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. So as you were talking, it very much rang true to me because I've had a few of my own experiences recently, but Robin and I were talking before we came on about that you can think you know something or you can imagine how that might feel, but until you have your own personal experience with it, it's hard. Once you have that first experience, it snowballs because you
yeah.
know. And I think what I wanted to ask of you, and this is, do you find that there's certain, I don't know if it would be personality types or zodiac signs or whatever it may be, that really need that plant medicine because they're not able to, like, there's the artsy, fluffy people that are very easy to go into their imagination and just allow and believe. And then there are the very analytical people that they might have an experience, but they don't trust it. And they have these voices coming back at them saying, oh, how do you know that that's actually something real?
Mm.
So do you find that there is a certain type of person that relates well to this type of medicine? And have you had that experience?
That's a really good question. How long do you guys have?
We have a little bit of time
I'm
left.
I'm
Not
I'm
here
I'm
yet.
I'm joking. I'm joking. It's just
Yeah.
that there's a lot of potential nuance to that, you know?
Mhm.
And there's mysterious qualities as well. Like I don't claim to know. I think
Mhm.
that this even, Robin, as you were referring to, like this goes into past lifetimes, you know? And somehow for whatever reason, I think that some people are just like this is part of their life path here
Mhm.
on
Mhm.
Earth in this lifetime. Um, that being said, it is very clear to me that there are certain people who will get more out of the experience. There's a more of a quality of openness, right? Mentally, emotionally, uh, energetically, even on a mental level. I mean, there are many people who have this quality of like almost like rigid thinking, calcified thinking of like very deeply ingrained beliefs and perspectives that they're not really willing to relinquish, you
Yeah.
know? To what extent do we have the capacity to accommodate novel perspectives, new ways of seeing the world, new beliefs, new insights, new understandings that might challenge our previously held beliefs and say, oh, wait, actually, is it possible that I was wrong in the past? Some people really have that kind of like that mental agility, that mental flexibility. Other people are very, very kind of rigid mentally as well as emotionally. It's scary to look at painful feelings. It's scary to confront uh, anger, sadness, grief, shame, jealousy, rage, fear itself, all these things, right? There are very subtle qualities of like emotional intelligence, emotional openness, self-awareness, right? To what extent, and I'll say this, many people live their lives, especially in today's world, many people live their lives neck up.
Mhm.
Their awareness is always kind of up here, and it's almost like they're disconnected at the neck. If I ask a person like that, how are you feeling right now? Like, what emotion is coming up for you? They might be visibly crying, they might be visibly laughing. And I'll ask someone like that. It's like I'm speaking Japanese. They'll just say, well, I don't really know how I'm feeling right now, right? There's almost this quality of like emotional awareness, self-awareness, that requires a little bit of a willingness to sit with discomfort and a willingness um to be still, you know. So many people are in this type A, like always got to be doing something, always got to be going after something, always like very goal oriented, achievement oriented. I need to like check all these things off the checklist. That's good, that's adaptive in some ways, but it can only take us so far as spiritual evolution, as far as healing. Again, that's very much the trying to pull the flower out of the seed approach, right?
Yeah, well,
Um,
you look at the energy centers, which are kind of the sending and receiving devices between that solution maker and then the human part of yourself. If the human is closed, if their perceptions and beliefs are really narrow-minded and they've had enough analytical, practical upbringing and experience, they'll close off their energy centers, and there's no way that they can receive that information or that data
right, right.
that expands them into another consciousness. So as far as they're concerned, this is it. This is the only thing that exists, is what they're presently seeing. And it's not that they don't want to see or that they don't believe people necessarily, but they have to actually open up their field a little bit. Somehow that belief has to get cracked enough that the energy from that source can actually flow into them. It's not necessarily coming through our mouths. And that's one of the things I learned in the channeling experience is I'm not hearing words. I don't know what's coming next. I just know that energetically there's a thought that's going to be communicated, or a teaching, if you will, is going to come through. And it hasn't have anything to do with words. And so we're always like talking to people, trying to get them to understand what we're trying to say. And they're running it through all their filters and all their perceptions and all their beliefs. But once in a rare while, I'll get someone in a session and I can just feel the closed door. I can just feel
Yeah.
that. And I'll just say to them, if we're going to have a really good session and you're going to get what it is that you need to get, can you just think about just letting go and just opening up to the possibility
Yeah.
that there's more to you than just yourself sitting in that chair? And they'll do it. Most of the time they will do it. I would say a good 90% of the time they come that way. But once in a while, when you get one that's not that way, and you say that to them, they will open a little bit. And you have to realize that the divinity part of yourself is 100% in support of you as a human. It's given you free will to feel your experience. It loves you unconditionally in every stinking thing that you think and feel. And so if you happen to think that this isn't true, it's going to support you in that by not
Right.
to you, by not even knocking at your door with that information until you're well ready to receive it, until you've actually called out for it. Sometimes a call can come in suffering. You can just be miserable for so long. Heidi went through a period like that. And then all of a sudden, something comes to you in answer to that call. It can be even something that comes that way. But again, it's responding to you. I guess that's the point I'm trying to make.
Absolutely. Very much
Yeah.
agreed.
Yeah, I mean, I know that we don't have to suffer, but I think suffering is a powerful attractant to this being a solution. And I also think that looking back at suffering after you've come out the other side just makes that suffering something to be so thankful for. Like in the moment when you're suffering, you just want it to go away. You don't think that anything good is coming out of it. But then when you see what came out of it, it's like, I'm so happy I went through that because
Mm.
it got me to here.
In some cases, I think the suffering is the divine part of us loving ourselves. It's a compassionate teacher in disguise.
Mhm.
It certainly doesn't always feel that way, but it's like the old saying, it takes friction to polish the gem, right?
Yeah.
And how many, how many incredibly spiritually evolved people um, had their first kind of opening because of suffering. I
A
mean,
lot, a
But
look
lot.
at
really, in essence, what is suffering? Suffering is the perception of belief that you are not something that you want to be, yet you can't feel something that you want to feel as a human. That's why you're brought to suffering.
yeah,
I'm not the husband I want to be. I don't have the income that I thought that I should produce. I don't have the mate that I thought would make me happy. And so as I dwell in that space of not believing, of not trusting, of not knowing that everything that I want exists and has been created, I suffer.
yeah,
Suffering isn't something that we came here to do. It's something that we do in our lack of connection or belief in
yeah,
ourselves and in the universe as a whole. I think that's what really causes suffering. Once people recognize that there is a solution formed in every moment that you are struggling, and that exists. So you're not made to suffer, but your perception that you have not created, that's what makes you suffer. The
yeah,
idea that I'm this, dysfunctional low life that doesn't have what I want and is never going to get it. That's what's creating suffering. It's not a
mm,
lesson that's being placed upon you from the divine as some would lead you to believe.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, look at the life of Buddha, for example. And Buddhism as an entire religion was born with one question in mind. And it and it wasn't, how do I find enlightenment? It wasn't how do I find God? It was, is it possible to live a life without suffering?
Mhm.
That was the Buddha's question. that led to all
Yeah.
of Buddhism, leaving the palace and seeing the sick, seeing the
Yeah.
old, seeing the hungry.
Yeah.
How can I be free? How can I find liberation in the face of the challenges of the human condition? And
Mhm.
yeah, I completely agree with everything that you just said, Fabi.
Yeah, you can't really get out of the condition when you're remaining in the problem. And that's where a lot of people find themselves. They get stuck in what they think is a reality. But what is reality? I mean, everyone's reality is different based upon their emotional baggage or what their life experiences cause them to feel. It's different for everybody. And so is there really any reality other than the one that you're perceiving? Not really. That's really the only reality that exists. So why not make it one that you really love without suffering? You have that option. And a lot of people don't realize they have that option.
Right.
Mm,
And I had mentioned, I think on one of our other recordings too, because I had a lot of suffering in 2024 and I had an energetic thing happen to me. And I woke up the next morning feeling better and nothing in my outer world had changed.
right.
I just felt better. And that started me, like that experience started me expanding more and more and more because I could see what Athena, they teach, everybody is just you, these mirrors are coming to show you what is active in you. And then when you have that experience and then you know that to be true, it is kind of like you said, where you were staring at that blade of grass and how magnificent it was. It's like now you see things that were always probably in front of your eyes that you never noticed as magical or synchronistic or anything like that. Like, just every normal everyday experience now is viewed completely different. And like I said, nothing outside of me has changed.
Yeah.
Right.
Changed inside.
Yeah. Well, hold that thought when you go down in the shitter, because that
Oh
happens.
yeah, because it's like you're up and then
Every once in a while you go, you slip back down
a
into the bellows of third dimensional reality. We all like to visit there once in a while. So
oh yeah. Yeah, because
hold that thought.
it's the contrast, that kind of
Mm,
your growth goes in stages, like you get yourself to a point where you feel really confident and then all of a sudden something's like, oh, they're in a good place. Now we're going to show them this to look at and let them deal with that. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah, it's true. So what have you noticed now, Jonas, as time has gone on, you've had these experiences, you've had some Kundalini activity that you're aware of. Are you continuing? How many years has this been going on? Well, 2011, I know that's when you first started doing the plant medicines, but is it surprising to you that it takes a long time? Like a lot of people think that a spiritual awakening is like that, like the Kundalini is going to rise and they're going to be awakened. And they think they are afterwards, when really, in fact, for me, anyway, I can only speak on my behalf. It went on 25 years and it's still going on. So I just wonder what your view is as far as that goes.
mm. Yeah. It's there's so much to be said about that potentially as well. Like after awakening, what next? Um, and for me, there's certainly the experience has continued to unfold and evolve in so many ways that I would really kind of characterize as overall a deeper and deeper intimacy with myself, with true self, uh, and an expanding awareness of uh, what true self means and just how infinitely expansive that is. When I first had these psychedelic experiences, they were so and this spiritual awakening in my life. It was so powerful and transformative and inspiring that really felt inspired to share. I started a YouTube channel where I speak about different, spiritual teachings, exploration of consciousness, psychedelic education, but then really exploring the mysteries from near-death experiences to past life memories, whole field of parapsychology, and on and on. And I had this really interesting moment when I first started. I mean, this was again over 10 years ago. I posted a video about how the self is an illusion, the ego, the human identity, is ultimately illusory. It's not the deepest truth to who and what we are. I mean, when I was just born, I didn't have any identity. I didn't know my name was Jonas. I had no sense of, belief system or anything like that, and yet I was still me. Since that point of time, everything about my body and my mind has been in a continual state of flux and change, right? And yet there's some self that's been constant, a constant thread through all of that. So what is that? And that's more, I would say, moving in the direction of true self, pure consciousness, the life force, chi, prana, soul, spirit, whatever we want to call it, that there's some fundamental essence, the divine spark within us, right? So anyway, I had posted this video talking about that concept, and then I noticed the next day, I was like going to the page and refreshing and checking like how many views and what are the comments and what are the likes and and all of a sudden I realized like, whoa, that's a bit ironic that I'm here talking about how the self is an illusion, and yet here I am checking
True.
all the numbers and do people like it and blah 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 and all this, how are people judging me and all these things. And that was a really interesting moment for me because all of a sudden I realized that there's aspects to um, living in alignment with spiritual truth, spiritual wisdom, a liberated state of consciousness that are much deeper than just like the analytical mind and the conscious conceptual understanding. There's aspects of it that tie down into what we could call the unconscious, the subconscious, right? And that's one of the beautiful things about the psychedelic space is that it really is so holistic and interdisciplinary, going from, as previously mentioned, the deeply personal and kind of the shadow side to, divine illumination, we could say. I realized that as much as I had really um, beyond a shadow of doubt affirmed that divinity is real, that soul is real, that there's way more to what I am. There were still all these things in the kind of like the personal side of Jonas that was still caught up in all these ego games,
Yeah.
that was
Well,
really,
in my experience or what I have channeled in past recordings is the ego. A lot of people look at it as a negative or something that is to be gotten rid of or controlled or put on a leash,
mm,
whatever you want to say. And the ego is a necessary thing when you are in third density and you only have access to the three lower energy centers. You have to create with effort. You have to struggle. There's not enough. There's lust. There's jealousy, rage. All of those types of emotions belong to third density. And so what you have access to as a human when you arrive here is the three lower energy centers. And so as you live your life and have your experiences and are always calling out to the universe, whether you know it or not, gradually as your ability to understand how you're creating starts to expand a little bit, the energy starts to come up out of the three energy centers and starts to access the heart center and then so on up. And with those energy centers comes higher levels of perception, higher levels of consciousness. And
yes,
what happens is as you pop out of third density or you're not just contained anymore in the three lower energy centers, it doesn't mean that you don't entertain a human thought once in a while that brings you there, but you become much more elevated in your level of consciousness. And therefore, it's not a matter of changing or getting rid of an ego. It's a matter of not needing it anymore. That's what
mm,
actually happens. So as you move up in your expansion into your upper energy centers, you enact the ego less and less, and it just starts to fall away. It's not something you need to do battle with. It's not something you need to condemn
right,
bad or wrong. It's something that just very gradually settles back down into three lower energy centers. And of course, when you have one of those shit days that I was talking about, you go back and you enact that, where you care about what somebody said, where you were hurt by something that you heard that someone was thinking about you. And so it's always there, is what I'm trying to say, but it becomes less and less active as consciousness expands.
right. I think
Mhm.
that's very well said and so true. I mean, who is the one trying to kill off the ego anyway? You know?
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
That's just all more ego games.
Mhm.
And I agree that trying to get rid of our ego is almost like analogous to trying to get rid of our body. It's
Yeah,
part of what this organism is. You know,
Yeah.
I can't live this life without a physical body. I can't be a human being without a physical body. And likewise, ego is just part of the package, I think. I don't introduce myself as like, hi, I'm Infinite God Source. Nice to meet you. Hi, I'm
Right.
Jonas. Nice to
Right.
meet you, right? It's
Exactly.
something, there's something very functional and practical about the way that, and adaptive about the way that the ego enables us to exist and coexist and relate and interrelate in this world. And I very much have come to the position of it's really not about getting rid of the ego, it's about coming into right relation with life, you know, coming into right relation with ourselves. And I think when that happens, exactly as you describe, Robin, there is this very natural kind of elevation of the energies, for me, it's really kind of like, what does it mean to live with in a place of spiritual wisdom? For me, it's so simple. One word, love.
Mhm.
That's it. That is it. It's just more love. And there's no limit to how brightly we can shine the light of our love. In kind of a more grounded sense, the idea of like heart-centered awareness has become a really big aspect of my lived experience. And for me, what it means to live in alignment. um, Previously, I was describing how a lot of people are just up here all the time, neck up. And for me, it really, when I feel into my home center, into my body, it's here, you know, it's much more here than like in the mind. And the only word that I can give to that quality, to that experience is love, you know. And I think that that is the ultimate evidence or uh, proof or validation that spiritual wisdom is being kind of enacted is, to what extent am I being a kinder, more loving, more compassionate, just better human, right? And it's very different from what we could call like a spiritual bypass or kind of escapism where I'm like avoiding all my human problems or denying the existence of my human condition. Someone once said to me that uh, becoming more spiritual isn't about becoming more spiritual, it's about becoming more human in a way. You know, it's like a really just being fully engaged, fully like this intimacy, this embodiment, being here, not trying to leave here to go somewhere else. We're all going back there soon enough, you know, going back there. You know, it's always here already, but it's not about trying to escape this and go there. It's about bringing there here,
Right.
as I see it, and that's a very different orientation.
Yeah. Well, Jonas, I've loved listening to your answers. I think that you're pretty amazing, actually. And I would like to share, if you could share with guests how they would get a hold of you if they were interested in partaking in any journeys that you do in Jamaica, how they would find out more information about you.
Sure, thank you. Yeah, so I have a YouTube channel called, just by my name, Jonas Rosen. Anyone can look me up there. I have a website called Inner Vision Psychedelics, Inner Vision Psychedelics, all one word, .com, where people can contact me and set up a one-on-one meeting and find more information about the retreats that we do in Jamaica.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming on, and you have such a genuine, natural way about you. I can't imagine that you're finding anything other than success in the direction that you're going. I hope we meet again. I really enjoyed my interview that I did with you as well, and I think we're going to probably see each other again someday.
I very much hope so. Yeah, and thank you so much for the opportunity to come on. It's been a true pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.